Our message today is being delivered by Larry Smith, artist in residence for UUFS. So if I would like to talk to us about the last.
Good morning, UU. Welcome.
Good morning.
Something completely different here, and maybe it won't fall apart before we get it in place. I want to take you back. At least 500 years ago, when a famous artist named Leonardo was around, and he was given the task of doing a painting on a wall. This is just about the perfect size because the wall they had to deal with was 30 feet wide. This one is exactly 30 feet wide. And 14 feet tall. This one is about 12 feet tall. So it's very close to the actual size of what he had to deal with. He chose a story that goes back another 15,000 years earlier, called the Last Supper. Now this is Easter. This is when Christ arose. The Last Supper was 4 days earlier, when Christ was meeting with his disciples on the last evening before he was going to be taken prisoner and then hanged on the cross. So we're going two stories simultaneously. What he had to do was, and he'd been thinking about this for 15 years. There have been hundreds of different ways to do the Last Supper, and he did not like any of them. You got Christ, you have 12 disciples, that's 13 people. How are you going to put them on this wall? First, when he got in there, and this room was part of a monastery, and it was actually the dining hall. There was a raised dais at one end of the hall where the prior got to sit, so he was above everybody. Okay. The other wall was blank and it was in bad shape. So first thing they had to do was prepare the wall. And then they had to put something on that wall that paint would stick to, because he was experimenting with a brand new way of painting using oil paint. Okay. He was inventing all the time. Okay. Then he started, okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, Christ has got to be in the center. And all of a sudden, he had an idea. What if we use some of the disciplines, math that the Greeks had invented, and let's start with the perfect shape. But before that, how do you find the middle? Okay, well, you just measure it, okay? But wait a minute, this wasn't invented yet 500 years ago. So how did they do it? Miss Bell, would you help me? With a piece of string and a piece of burnt stick called charcoal. If you put a string in one corner and string taut in the other corner, and you pull it tight and you rub a stick of charcoal on it, you would find the exact center. Forgot mine. But I'm going to do a quick marker. And it's close. And then we're going to go to the other corner. And without any problem at all, we know exactly where the middle of that whole wall is without using any other instrument. Plus, now we can measure what's perpendicular. Gravity doesn't work, so you can do straight lines. You can take it and draw diagonal lines from the center in any direction. There's all kinds of things you could do with just a piece of string and a burnt stick. He came up with, let's take this center and let's put Christ dead center. But let's raise it up just a little bit. Let's put dead center up here. Because he had an idea. If the prior's over there and he's on a raised dais, let's put Christ on the other side and let's raise him up so that not only you're looking at him, but you're looking up at him. And Christ is looking back at you and over the top of the prior. So who's boss? right? And he came up with this shape. This beautiful, wonderful triangle that the Greeks had invented. Now, my triangle's not perfect because I'm not doing it as slow as he did. The perfect triangle. They called it the golden triangle. 3 sides. That's where Christ is going to be. Okay, we got 6 men over here, 6 men over here. Let's divide them up. So let's put another triangle over here. And we'll put 3 people here. If you're gonna have a triangle and a triangle, let's put a third one here. And we'll put 3 people over here. Funny thing about this, you're gonna hear a lot of numbers. The triangle has 3. So interesting, 3 sides. 3 men, 3 men. There should be another one over here. And another one over there, but he came up with a different idea. Triangles are solid. You can move around within them. But he decided when you get over here, we need to slow down your eyeball. He was like a conductor. He was manipulating how you look at this painting. And you haven't even seen any people yet. But he decided over here, we're going to break it down and go with a rectangle. You're gonna put one over there. In art, you gotta balance things out. So he put another one over here. Now, the cool thing about rectangles is they're solid. You get to them and you just kind of stop. But that was the whole idea. Triangles, you're always moving around. When you get over to the edge, you kind of stop. And that's what he wanted you to do, because this is the edge. Go back. You get over here and you stop, and you're at the edge and you go back. Okay. Now, all of this preparation work had taken months and months and months. The prior was going, when are you going to finish the painting? Come on. And this went on month after month. And finally, Leonardo said to the prior, I am looking for the perfect Judas. Would you mind posing? And he never heard another word prior, because Leonardo literally was walking around the town of Milan looking for the perfect face. He found his Peter, he found, Bartholomew, but he couldn't find Judas. Well, finally, now we can go up to the next slide. We got all of his stuff down. Okay, we're up to there. He created a vanishing point. We have to talk about some numbers. Okay, you got 3 sides of a triangle. You have 12 men. Notice how you can take 12 men. There's 6 and 6. 6 and 6 is 12. Back to numbers. But you can also take 3, 3, 3, and 3. You still come up with 12. You add Christ in, you get a 13, which is a 1 and a 3. This is a whole discipline called numerology. But you can really get into this, and we're going to get into it even more. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're going to move things along here because I can talk, and I'm trying not to do my 45-minute talk. Now he finally started adding in the people. Let's start with Christ. He made him a little bit larger, and he put him within that triangle with his arms out, laying out. Now, once again, I think Leonardo may have been the first Unitarian Universalist, because you remember we just did, here he is. If you look very carefully, the hands, except one is out and one is grabbing. So he may have been our first, anyway. Moving on. He put the next group over here, and this group on purpose, they are a little more contained, and these are a little more open. This group They don't quite fit into the triangle. One of them happens to be Judas. These guys, they're standing up. Something is going on there. The painting supposedly, in his mind, was this is the moment when Jesus said, one of you shall betray me. And this is their reaction. So he's putting in lots of emotion, if you look very carefully. You have hand gestures. You know, you can do a lot of things with your hand. You can talk to somebody. You can not talk to them. You can be ugly with them. You can do two hands together. There's so many things. You can scratch your head, cover your face. That's just with your hand. Then you got your whole body language. You can be up and erect. You can be kind of slouchy. You can lean a little bit. And if you've got the goods, you can be a little bit sexy. You know? So this is called body language. Then you've got other things like you can move. Like you look over here, these guys, oh, not me. I didn't do it. You know? And over here, you've got these guys going, can you believe what he said? You know, and so I love this part about the painting where you have these three guys, they're talking to each other, not even looking at Christ, but their hands are directing you back. Look at him. He's the one who said that, not me. You know, so for Leonardo to come up with all this stuff is just blows me away. It's just incredible. Let me see if I forgot something. I've been talking and there's always something I forget that I need to say. Got that part covered pretty good. This part. Yeah, let's talk about some of the people. Philip. He's right here. He's got his hands out. I would never. That's his gesture. James the Greater, he stares downwards. His arms are also thrown wide. And then Thomas has one finger up. He says, just one of us? Okay. Matthew and Jude, they're looking to Simon, but then their hands are going this way. Can you believe this guy? Over here on the other side, you've got John. John was supposedly the best friend of Christ. He stayed with Jesus while he was on the cross, and his hands are crossed, and they holy. I am the Holy One. Peter is leaning in, trying to whisper to John, but he's holding a knife, which is another symbol. If you know the story, he cut off a soldier's ear the night before. And then you got Judas. He's wearing a blue coat. We can't tell that right now. He's leaning away from Christ. He's holding a money bag, 12 pieces of silver. There's that magic number 12 again, which is a variation of 3. And he knocks over a salt shaker. And in that world, salt was highly valuable. You don't want to waste it. Spilled salt is still a bad omen for some people. So he's bringing in symbolism here. Bartholomew, can't talk anymore, is looking at Christ, both hands on the table, but he's rising up. That's a pretty strong statement, like something building inside. James is reaching around Andrew towards Jesus, and Andrew, both hands are up. Wasn't me. Compositional highlights. We know Christ is in the center. Because he's higher, you are forced to look up. The center of the room is actually the middle of Christ's head. That was purposeful. Most important thing there. The table is really too large to fit into this room. but somehow in the painting, it all works. They're all on one side of the table. You wouldn't normally sit at a table with everybody crowded on one side. Even TV shows are always around, leaving an opening for the audience. But this is where Leonardo's background as a set director and doing all these plays for his patriarch, learned that, like setting up a play, everybody has to play to the audience. And since the audience was a group of people eating their dinner, the way he set them up, they're eating their dinner as you're eating your dinner, and they're eating with the same kind of things that you would be eating. So it's kind of like, here we are, and we're all in this together. It's not like they are separate, they are part of you. Okay. They are also using the same utensils that the monks would have been using in there, and the same kind of food. And this is another one of those symbolism. They're eating, they have three things on the table. They have their wine, their bread, and their fish. There's that number 3 again. So what kind of fish? Now, this is an interesting thought. Let me find my next piece of paper. The fish could have been 2 choices. The painting is ruined. We'll get to that in a moment. One of the choices is a type of eel, which means to indoctrinate. And that was Jesus's job to the disciples, to indoctrinate new members to the community. Or it could have been a herring, which is also somebody who denies there is a religion. Another possibility. Also, Peter denied knowing Christ that evening, if you know your story very well. Oh, who's that guy? Oh, I don't know him at all. You must be mistaken. How do you show the man of God? Leonardo knew we're not going to put those big gold things that all the Gothic people were enamored, having a gold halo around the guy. It just didn't work. And we're not going to put that little gold ring floating over his head, because that just, so he came up with the idea, what if we put something behind Christ that represents like a halo without being a halo? So he put a window in there, and then he put 2 more on either side, because you got to have 3, of course. And the window actually was one of his new experiments, a landscape of the actual scene. If you could look through that wall, what was on the other side of that wall? There's the view of the Milan Mountains in the distance, which the same picture almost comes back 4 years later when he did this little bitty painting called, come on, brain, suddenly.
Is it
The Mona Lisa. Yeah, it's only about this big, but there in the background is almost the same painting that of the background you see in The Last Supper. Let's see what else I can talk about before we run out of time. We see the next slide, Ms. Lee. This is a enhanced version of what the painting looks like, as if it wasn't damaged. You notice there is a door in the bottom of the painting. The painting started falling apart within a few years after he put it up. It's an open kitchen. Years of smoke were going right there onto the walls. They were using candles. So all of that smoke was constantly going in. There was humidity. There were 2 major floods that insulated the entire town. The wall absorbed that moisture. And it went up through the walls because the walls were basically rock and very cheap cement. Then they put plaster over it. Plaster will absorb the water, so everything came through. And then you've got this layer of tar and oil paint on the other side. Well, they started separating and flaking off. So it wasn't long before it was starting to look very, very bad. And then maybe a century later, some guy said, I know what, we can put some kind of varnish on top of it and that'll keep it in place. Well, that's cool, but the varnish over time slowly started getting darker and darker. So by the end of that century, it was almost black. Somebody else came along, tried to clean it up, and more pieces of the painting came across. I forgot to mention, just 4 years after the painting was done, the French invaded Milan, and they came in and took over the monastery for a while. Then another war, they left. We've had a few earthquakes. In Napoleon's time, when he came along, they came in there. They tore out everything that was there before, turned it into a stable, and then they turned it into a prison. And then after that, they decided the soldiers were going to stay there. The soldiers took their guns and used the eyes as targets. So it was basically destroyed. And of course, they cut a hole through it so they could get the animals in and out during the stable. So that part of the painting is permanently gone. But it has been slowly restored bit by bit over the time. You see, I forgot anything else. Yeah, the door was cut through in 1652. Oh, World War II. The Nazis bombed the entire monastery. Fortunately, though, the monks that were still there had thought, what if, and built a sandbag wall in front and on the backside of it. And even though the bomb blew out the whole works, the wall was intact. So when they uncovered it after World War II, the painting was still there. So. I made it through. Let's show the other slide. I left out a lot. There is more we can talk about after, if anybody wants to come back after. This is kind of the way the painting looks today. They have spent millions and millions of dollars trying to restore it. Notice the tapestries on the side walls are to help focus you back into the center using those, what we call linear perspective. In the next slide, please. This is done by one of his students. Sorry for the imagery, but apparently the internet won't let us get a perfect copy of it. But this is one of the better ones. I think it's in I can look it up. And let's go to the next one. Here's yet another student's version of it there. Do we have a third one? Nope. Okay, that was it. Thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts about why I think this may be the best work of art that exists in the world today. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited about it. And thank you for your time.
The holder.